Because at the end of the day, remember that food isn't just fuel. It's not bad. That's not good. It's enjoyment. It's comfort. It's love. It's passion. It's tradition.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. If you're new here, I make fitness, wellness, and lifestyle content trying to prove that no matter who you are capable of achieving your goals. And if you're not new here, welcome back to the channel. I'm doing a little special crossover between my channel and the podcast and sharing this amazing podcast that we recorded about 2 weeks ago with dietitian Alice Bleathman. And I thought it was really fitting to come onto the channel as we talk about so many amazing topics, including diet culture, emotional eating, your relationship with food, just honestly so many good things. And also it's like a good laugh, really entertaining, but super informative and educational as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, remember to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed. You can also subscribe to the podcast at Just Can't Hack It Pod on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'll catch you in the next video, guys. Alice, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Thanks for having me. Can't wait. I'm currently sitting in my van. It's 30 degrees. And looking at the ocean. So what better company than you guys?
Oh, stunning. All right. Well, do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and why you became a dietitian?
Geez, start with a big one. Okay, let me start. I'm probably going to blab on. You guys will probably get sick of me after like 3 minutes because I tend to take a lot of tangents. But we'll start with the very beginning. So I grew up in Tassie and I moved to Melbourne when I was 18 to study nutrition and dietetics. I was actually originally going to be a doctor, which is funny because I couldn't see myself as a doctor ever. But I think and you guys might be related to this, like I think when I was young, all I heard coming from family, friends, and teachers was, "Al, you're smart enough, be a doctor." And I was like, okay, sure, I'll do that. That sounds like I can get lots of money from that. So I was going to be a doctor, and then I did a gap year when I finished school. Decided that was actually a bit ridiculous and I don't see myself ever working that many hours in a day. So I got a scholarship to Deakin University in Melbourne and flew to Melbourne when I was 18 and started studying nutrition and dietetics. I guess for me, like the reason why I started and looked into dietetics was purely because I loved food and I loved helping people. I know that sounds so cheesy, but I wanted to combine the two somehow and I thought that was the coolest thing. So that's what I did. And I also saw there was avenues of dietetics where you could run your own business and you can work online and it could be quite flexible. Whereas other allied health professionals like being a doctor or being a nurse or being an exercise physiologist or a physio, there wasn't as much online capacity. And so I kind of had that at the back of my mind, but it was pre-COVID. So I was like, that wasn't really a thing, but I kind of thought I can make a business out of this without necessarily practicing a dietitian. So that's kind of what led me to studying dietetics and becoming a dietitian. And then after that, I moved to Sydney and I worked in a business for 6 months and then I started my own. So yeah, that was like 5-second overview of my journey. But yeah, now I'm living in a van, so we can get to that.
Love it. That's great. That's such a good story of how you got there. And I definitely related to you should just be a doctor. I definitely heard that as well when I was a kid. And I was like, yeah, that'd be a great idea, but I hate vomit. So it was never going to happen.
Yeah.
Never going to happen.
Yeah.
That's like nice for you guys. I did not get that. I got the opposite. I got like, you're not smart enough. Like, don't try. Oh. Yeah, show them. You showed them.
Gosh. Yeah, you showed them. Yeah, that's fun, isn't it? Oh, I hate that stuff, eh? Like, but I think it's changed now, but I think that, back in the day, going to university was highly esteemed and, the superior option for people. And so that was not even non-negotiable. I had to go to university. I had to show people that I was successful, whatever the fuck that means. But anyway, I now have changed my view on university altogether, and I don't believe that unless you want to have a career that is dependent on a degree, I don't think university is necessarily the right direction for as many people as it may come across as.
I agree. Ella and I are like, relatable. Yeah.
Yeah, can relate.
Alice, tell us what exactly the role of a dietitian is. Like, what's your day-to-day? Like, what do you do with your clients?
Yeah, great question. So I guess to answer that, I might explain my business because as a business owner, I guess you could call me. I still feel weird saying that. I'm like, I don't know.
Cute little plug. Yeah.
So I do a lot of things, and I think that I'm meant to do a lot of things because my brand doesn't, it gets very bored with just one thing. And I'm always having things in the background. Like even if it might seem like I'm, seeing clients, I've like got like 4 other projects in the back of my head and I'm like, okay, and that's just the way that my brain works. And it's always done that. And so for me, running a business meant that I had to have multiple prongs of that business. Otherwise I just get bored and give up. So when I started my business in 2020, I started practicing just purely as a dietitian online, and it worked because people were locked inside due to COVID. I also had a little bit of following, like 8,000, 10,000 Instagram followers at the time. And I also had connections and referrals. So that kind of worked for me. And then after 6 months, I was like, okay, well, this is exhausting. In order for me to get enough money, I'll have to see like a lot of clients every single week. And that exhausts me because I feel, for me, I want to put energy into every one of my clients. I just couldn't do that if I was seeing the amount I was seeing to be able to basically like have money and savings and afford to live in Sydney, as you guys could understand. And then I started, actually my first product was like my ebook. So I started my ebooks and they randomly did like super well. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I like this stuff. So I did that. And then I grew my Instagram during COVID. And nowadays, like my business kind of entails a couple of things. Like I still see clients. I actually see probably half as many clients as I used to. And that's completely intentional because I have a lot of other things that I'm doing in my business that's not client related. And I actually find, I was talking to my partner about this yesterday, like I find that when I have the client number that I do have at the moment, I can be a better dietitian, and I don't resent, like seeing my clients and that this isn't on them. It's just like sometimes you just don't have the capacity, as I'm sure you can understand in your jobs. It's like, oh my God, I have to work today. It's like now I'm like, yes, I get to catch up with these people, these clients today. Whereas if I have a lot, it kind of takes away from that kind of joy of seeing and connecting and helping. So I do see them. I think at the moment I'm probably doing three, I'd say 2 full days or 3 like mostly full days. And then usually the sides of the week, so Mondays and Fridays, are more so my creative days. So at the moment I'm creating an ebook, a little bit different ebook this time, but like an ebook. I haven't actually, you guys like that won't be, I won't release it till next year, but that ebook encompasses elements of van life too. And then I've got sort of my Instagram things, which I work with brands on creating content for Instagram and TikTok, which is so fun and I love that. And then as well on the side, I've got a YouTube coming up with my partner, and I did write a book as well this year. So I've got like different elements of creativity and then like clinical work, and I just love it because it means that I just don't get bunged down in one avenue and get kind of irritated or bored or frustrated. And I think as well in today's climate, sorry, this is you can probably tell how my brain works, like 12 fucking topics all at once in my brain. I think in today's climate, it's really hard as a business owner to rely purely on individuals. And I know that sounds like super businessy and woo-woo and weird, but for me, like I found that people especially with dietetics, aren't investing as much money as they would maybe 2 years ago as COVID was going on. And so for me, I was like, I have to change things because people aren't investing as much in their health on non-necessities, basically, which is fact. And that's not my fault, anyone's fault. It's just facts. And also I can't invest this energy into one-on-ones all the time either, because I don't have the capacity or the energy, and I won't be able to meet my needs in my business. And at the end of the day, business is supposed to be enjoyable to an extent. So long story short, that's what I do. And there's no day to day because every day and every week is different. But as a general rule, clients are 3 days, creative for 2. And then the weekends are the weekends, I guess, mostly.
Love it. We're going to circle back to the original question.
Well,
what exactly is the role of a dietitian? So in your
that was a question.
We loved it anyway. It was and I feel we're even more honored that you're here, just knowing how busy you are.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not really that busy.
It's special weekend time, which is just, it means a lot to us.
So fine, guys. So what does a dietitian do? Great question. I'm glad you asked. So technically a dietitian sees people and helps optimize their diet, and often these people how would you say, they have medical ailments. So essentially dietitians can help assist with optimizing people's diet through nutrition nutrition substitutions or additions or personalizations that help with particular ailments. So they can help with healthy people, 100%, but we are trained as dietitians to help with the not so healthy people. And that's where I guess nutritionists and dietitians are different, because nutritionists, they're great and a lot of people diss them, but I think they're fantastic, but they can only really educate people in a healthy population group because they're not trained in the biochemistry. They're not trained in medical conditions. They're not trained necessarily in counseling and all these sorts of things. Behavior change, they're so important, especially when it comes to the people who aren't as well, because it's not just the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating or the Australian Dietary Guidelines. It's like, okay, like make sure you've got kidney failure. We need to make sure you reduce your potassium. You're having too much peanut butter. Like that's what we get taught. And for me, in my business, it's a lot of eating disorders, disordered eating patterns, and also sort of menstrual conditions too, like endo, PCOS. So you as a dietitian would work more so in that space.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that's what, I mean, I briefly mentioned it on the podcast. Like I see Alice for my endo condition and she's been pretty good. Can't complain.
You're a warrior, that one. She's good.
So Alice, tell us why you think it's important to have a like healthy relationship with food, and like I guess that comes with like why we sometimes feel guilty when eating certain foods, and like some foods are deemed good and bad. Like what's your opinion on that, and like why is it important to kind of like have a healthier relationship with food?
So can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
Like things, okay, I this is how I explain things. Kelly, you would understand.
Yes.
You understand the chaos in my brain. So when I was younger, like 14, 15, 16, 17, I was terrified of sugar. I was like, sugar, devil, it'll kill me, never gonna have it. And I was quote unquote the healthiest I've ever been in my life, but I was the most unhappiest essentially. And that was because for me, like going out and having dinner and having a couple of cocktails, not when I'm 16, but you know, having a couple of cocktails and like going out and getting burgers with my boyfriend or doing these things, that is a really enjoyable experience for me. And so if I then cut out all of that because sugar's the devil, then naturally my mental health would deteriorate. I'd become highly stressed, highly excluded from events, and that would actually impact my health more so than the toxic sugar. So for me, I'm so passionate, and I think this is what kind of led me into being a dietitian as well, is I'm so passionate about educating people that you can have these foods that aren't as nutritious as others, and you can still live a very happy and healthy life. And I say this time and time again on Instagram and stuff, like your diet and isn't just what you put in your mouth. It's also what you think and how you think about food. And if you're constantly worried about whether the freaking apple has too much sugar in it, like that is going to be more detrimental than the sugar-laden apple, which mind you is not actually fact, but anyway, I had that the other day. But you know what I mean? So like, yes, having a healthy relationship with food is imperative. And the other thing that I constantly remind people of is that food's not just fuel. Food's not just nutrients. Food is tradition, it's culture, it's comfort, it's so much more than that. And I think especially with the day of social media and things, like we kind of look at food as if it's just metrics, as if it's calories, protein, fats, carbohydrates, and iron and zinc and things. It's like, it's not just that. Yeah, it is. Like we need good fuel 100% to function. It's like putting shit petrol in a car, but that's not the only thing. That's not the only thing food's about. And I think that's also why having a poor relationship with food actually impacts not just your life, but also multiple facets of your life too. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, you definitely did.
Yeah, definitely. I guess what is in the simplest way possible, if there's people listening and they wanted to improve their relationship with food, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I would say some really tangible things you could do today is unfollow the fucking people on social media who promote silly diets, who say this is the only way, who cut out macronutrients, who show their abs before they do what I eat in a day. Like any of those people, unfollow them right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's step number one. Step number two, follow people who are educated on social media. Now, that could be dietitians, it could be nutritionists, it could be PTs, whoever is actually educating and who has qualifications. If you like this stuff, if you like learning about nutrition, don't follow Samantha, who has 2,000 followers and, like is on green juice every day. Like, no. Okay. Follow Jackson, who has a qualification and a PhD, right? the next thing is obviously to surround yourself with people where you can, with people who actually have a good relationship with food. Because at the end of the day, your social media, yes, like you see it every day, but you also see people that is around you as well every single day, or at least, every week. So if you have amazing people in your life who have a good relationship with food, spend time with them and try and distance yourself from the people who don't, because at the end of the day, like, that is toxic. And you're gonna, your ideas and your morals and your values are slowly gonna seep into theirs, because that's what humans are. We mirror each other, even if we don't necessarily believe what they say. Unfortunately, we mirror each other, we model each other, and that's just the way it goes. So where you can, expose yourself to people who actually have a good relationship with food in your physical environment, and then also your social environment. The other thing as well is that I know it's not accessible to a lot of people, but if you have the opportunity to connect with educated people like dietitians or nutritionists or GP who actually have an education and can essentially just like cut your bullshit and tell you what's right and what's wrong. And that could be like, literally, I have some people who just go, Alice, I just want one session. I've got a whole list of questions I've got to ask you, and then that's it. Okay, see you later. That can be really powerful, right? Because sometimes we don't know what to do. We have no idea. So I'd say if that is in your capacity and your resources, 100%. The other thing as well is that I find that when you improve your relationship with exercise and your body, your relationship with food also improves as well. So don't think it's just, I'm going to improve my relationship and everything else will be amazing after that. It's like, sometimes, more often than not, when we have a poor relationship with food, we also have a poor relationship with body and exercise as well. Unfortunately, it's like a threesome. So if you can work on all of those things together, because that will help assist with the relationship with food thereafter too. Other than that, like, it's really delving deep into why you have a poor relationship with food. So like, what happened when you were a child? What were your parents like? What were your siblings like? What were the people at school like what did you follow on social media when you were 12 years old? Like, all these sorts of things, if it is deeper than just unfollowing people and whatever, all these things matter too. And it's actually getting to the root of it and looking at it and going, that's not right, and I need to change this, and actively working every single day to challenge that little thought in your mind saying that that's bad and that's good. Because at the end of the day, remember that food isn't just fuel. It's not bad, that's not good. It's enjoyment, it's comfort, it's love, it's passion, it's tradition. Yes, it's nutrients, but you can get your nutrients from foods and also have your non-nutrient food as well. That's extremely accessible to every single person.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good response.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Really answered that. So you spoke a little bit about diet culture and, in social media, but also there's lots of like fad diets that go on, and you'll see it in videos that people post as well. I guess like we've both probably dabbled in some of those fad diets, as we'll call them.
I did the keto one. I was a keto girly for a while.
Keto girly, weren't we all?
And like the intermittent fasting as well.
I've done that as well.
Yeah, is another one. Like, what do you think? Like, can you like break down like how detrimental these fad diets are to our health, and like whether there's anything even backing them at all, or like what you would suggest to someone who kind of was
because I think it's still in today, like when you go, I want to lose weight, I still think because I'm out of that now, like I don't see the diet culture as much, but when you take a step back and you go, I actually want to lose weight, you still get hit with all that. Like,
yeah, you definitely do. It's like, you should do keto. It's like, you should do intermittent fasting. It's like, is that actually going to help, or is it just detrimental to our mental health?
Yeah. So fad diets are called fad diets for a reason. Like, they're a fad. They come, they go. Keto's been around for a while, like it's bloody done the rounds, but most fad diets have been and gone. Remember the celery juice diet? Like, who the fuck does that anymore?
Yeah.
Right? So there's lots of fad diets out there that's gone. Some are sticking around for way too long, keto. But I would say in a general sense, you notice fad diets when they're either extremely restrictive, they eliminate particular macronutrients, carbs, fats, proteins, or they're very scripted and rule-based. So, for example, I'll use a keto diet. The keto diet has this idea that when you cut out mostly carbohydrates and you have a high amount of protein and fats in your diet, you will lose weight. And the rule is you can't have any carbohydrates. Now, that for me is like massive blinkers on. Like, that is a red flag, because it's eliminating something that is, to be completely honest, essential for a body to function. I know the keto fanatics will be like, no, it's not, ketogenic, whatever. But it is, especially for females who have menstrual cycles and who need that extra energy and carbohydrate and safety within their body. When it comes to whether they work or not, the question you need to ask yourself is, what is working? Okay, like the keto diet, if working means losing weight, then yeah, it can work 100%. You're cutting out carbohydrates, you're cutting out energy, calories, and you're losing weight. Cool. Do they work long term in terms of losing weight? Science says no. And the reason being is that losing weight requires behavioral change and long term behavioral change. The keto diet isn't able to be maintained long term. So therefore, it can't result in long-term behavior change. So therefore, it's not actually a successful weight loss diet. The other question is, like, if it is in terms of a success regarding health, the keto diet in particular, it's extremely unhealthy. You've got to think about it. Carbohydrates in whole grains, in, you know, beautiful pastas, in breads, in cereals, fiber-rich foods. If you're eliminating those things, and also vegetables and fruits, if you're eliminating those things from your diet, you've got meat, eggs, milk, avocado, coconut oil, nuts, seeds, pretty much that's it. Now that's fantastic in moderation, but they're also extremely high in fats, and in particular saturated fats. We know from the evidence that high amounts of saturated fats can cause heart conditions and heart disease and heart attacks long term. So if you have low fiber, low antioxidant content, because you have no vegetables basically, and a high amount of saturated fat, long term, completely unsuccessful diet from a health point of view. Yeah. So yes, some diets can be really beneficial in terms of weight loss short term. I'm not denying that at all. But long term, from a health behavioral change point of view, most diets are extremely unsuccessful.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It's so funny how some people still think they're like the be all and end all. And like I was only like, I did keto maybe like 3 years ago, so not even that long ago. And there's actually someone that I follow who I like in the like fitness space, and he used to bag keto like no tomorrow, but he's doing it and he's like, oh, I've actually enjoyed it, but I don't think he'd ever actively promote it. So I kind of respect that in one way. But yeah.
I think as well there's a difference between male dieting and female dieting, and I see this naturally. This is a quite biased response because I am female and I see mostly 95% females in my clinic. But for females, like, we are so much more sensitive than males in terms of our body's response. Males, you think about it from an evolutionary point, they'd be out all day like hunting meats and all this sort of stuff, and they're quite resilient. Go them, whatever. Females, much more reserved. We have babies. We need to be much more empathetic. Our body as well is a lot more sensitive to changes within our systems and also changes in our diet. Carbohydrates in particular are really important for homeostatic impulses within our body, and in particular within our menstrual cycle. Now, if we're going on a keto diet, we're reducing carbohydrates. For females, we're going to have much larger, I guess, display, like essentially like our body will go into shock. Whereas for males, that's not as much of a common thing because males' bodies are just genuinely much more resilient to external changes and internal changes. So females, I would say that the worst thing you can do is to go on a fad diet or even to reduce carbohydrates drastically, because your body, you'll lose your period, then everything else will just go kaput, basically.
We have it so much worse. It's such bullshit.
It is. It's so much harder.
I know. But also, like, they don't have babies, and like babies, we literally are like the reason why people exist.
So true.
You're welcome. So we kind of touched on it before, and you were sort of saying it is really important to be educated and make like educated decisions, whether that's, you know, through a GP, dietitian, nutritionist, whoever it may be. Just touching on education, do you think the school system around nutrition, like the education in schools around nutrition, is adequate now, or do you think there's definitely still room for improvement?
I'll say it's pretty shit.
Oh, okay.
And only because I obviously went to school like 12 million years ago. The information we got at school was like, this is the healthy eating pyramid, reduce saturated fats and processed foods and eat lots of vegetables. And I'm like, sick. Cool, I'm going to McDonald's now. Like, what is it? Like, it was very like non-scripted, very just like, there's what we need to know, but, you know, there was no real like whys. And I think for kids, you know, it's so important to actually tell them and to condition and to have an environment where healthy eating is very normal and very expected. An example here is when I went to school, the tuck shop had burgers, pies, pastries, milkshakes, and then there was like a little bowl of apples, and no one had them. It's weird, like the apple kid, they're weird, right? So fortunately, like it's just not back in that day, the ages, dark ages, it was not normal to eat healthy and education. Nowadays I go to schools occasionally to educate about nutrition, and I've been recently to a dozen schools in the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and I'll be honest, like the education is far better and kids do eat a lot better. It's normal to eat well, and the canteens like chalk and cheese to what they were back in the dark ages. But I think as well, we are having more of an issue now than ever when it comes to diets, fad diets, disordered eating patterns, and eating disorders. So even though education's good, I think now there's actually far too much education in terms of the wrong education and in terms of influence through social media, that now it's actually really, really important to educate the right ways more than just educate full stop, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you can see it a lot, like with TikTok and just people
oh my god
promoting like really unhealthy eating. Like I see so much like what I eat in a day, and I see that some people like will just eat fruit all day. That's the only thing that they'll eat. Or like, and I know that like at least I'm looking at it at a bit older, but if I was looking at that at like 12 years old, I'd be like, oh, maybe I should be doing that, you know?
Far out.
It's really
yeah, when we're like 12, like far out. I honestly, and you know, we should all count our lucky stars that we didn't grow up in that sort of this now era where it's so normal to go on TikTok and just see people, you know, what show their bodies and then what they eat. Like that is so toxic, I can't even tell you. And especially from uneducated people. So this is like why Live Life Whole, which is this program that I work with, we are doing like this widespread state national education service for young kids from pretty much grade 5 to grade 12 about nutrition, body image, disordered eating patterns, like mindfulness, stress management, because we never got taught it at school, and it's so, so, so important, especially in this age. I hope it changes. I really do.
yeah.
I think like at least we're not in, I mean, but then you got to think about it. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. Like when, you know, my mom was back in, you know, like 50 years ago, whatever it was, 40 years ago. Sorry, mom. It was very much low carb, this low carb diet. So it hasn't like, it's not like it's just started. It's always been elements of diet culture. But I think right now it's just like infiltrating through so many systems because of social media and the rapidness of social media, rather than just magazines that you walk past on the way to, you know, school at the corner store.
Yeah, no, it's like just so much more in your face.
It's so wild. Like, I guess this comes back to Alice's tip before about like making sure you unfollow and aren't trying to look actively at those sort of people. Because for me, like I have a private like a personal Instagram that's fitness based only, and I only see, that's why I'm still shocked when you guys are saying this, because I only ever see people talk positively, and I'm like, yes, like look how far we've come. Everyone's like so well educated now, but I think there's just obviously this other side to it that I'm completely missing, which is shocking and devastating.
I think I only hear it from clients. Like I try to mute those kind of people, but it's pretty screwed up. Like the other day I heard one of my clients saying that she was on like a chewing gum diet and she'd just eat chewing gum all day.
She did herself?
I don't know, but I would have been bloated AF, hey. But honestly, like that was like, I thought it was a joke. I was like, nah, give me the TikTok. And it was like, so for breakfast I have strawberry chewing gum, and I'm like, and then I have like this chewing gum, and then I have water to keep me full. And it was a lot. I reported it a lot, but like, yeah, it's just no idea. It's just beyond. It's absolutely beyond. But I think this is where, like, you know, where like dietitians and people like yourselves who are educated, like, are really important to be on the platform, because it's like, you know, we can't beat them. We've got to join them, and we've got to like try and beat them through that way, because otherwise it's just, we have to dilute that noise.
So touching on this, we speak about quite regularly, Ella and I discuss on the podcast how inappropriate it is to speak about and comment on the way someone looks and someone's weight. And like even growing up in environments, like my grandfather, when we'd go out to eat, he'd be like, every time I'd order something that was like more than like a salad, he'd just look at me with a face of like, and I was like, it's like, thank you, love you. And it just, I think it really like sticks with kids, and I think it sticks with you for a long time. So, and you did mention this before, but can you elaborate how someone's size is not necessarily indicative as to how healthy someone is.
So it's actually really interesting when it comes to our body size. And the reason why people who are in a larger body may still be metabolically healthy is that there's so much evidence to show that the actual weight of our body isn't actually indicative of the medical ailments or the conditions that we will develop. And what I mean by this is somebody might be, let's call it obese, and I hate using that word, but I'm just going to say it for context, like obese, and they might be metabolically healthy because they have a lot of muscle mass, they have a very healthy diet, they have reduced stress, they don't drink much alcohol, etc., etc. So their lifestyle is actually extremely, aligned with the healthy metabolic health or profile. Now, in contrast, there might be somebody who is, let's say, healthy weight, quote unquote, by BMI standards, and they might drink a lot of alcohol, not get much rest, be super, super stressed, not eat very well at all, not exercise, and they might be metabolically unhealthy. So it's not just about weight. It's so much more than that. And that's what I try to hone in with my clients is that, at the end of the day, genetics play a huge role. And although you might be classed as overweight by BMI standard, firstly, BMI is a load of bullshit, which I'll get into in a second, but also your lifestyle is extremely supportive of your health, and in particular your metabolic profile, which is essentially like your cholesterol, your heart, heart results and things like that. And that's what's important, not your weight.
I hate BMI, and like,
yeah, so do I.
It's still like taught as the norm. Like it's still like the starting point for, okay, how do we determine if you're healthy? Let's check your BMI.
Yeah, like doctors do it, and then they'll like, it's just silly because like a lot of people do know that it's just not accurate. It doesn't take into account any like muscle mass, anything like that. It's literally just height and weight. That's it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it's not gender based. Which is ridiculous. Everything else is, but BMI is not. It's fucked up. But anyway, we'll get that's another story. But BMI, like if anyone was saying, BMI, there is a place where BMI can be important, but very rarely is it necessary to judge somebody's health off BMI.
No, we completely agree. So if someone like listening to the podcast did want to lose weight, can you explain some positive steps and things that they can do it in, I guess, like I don't know if the right word today is like healthy way, or just like a more maybe sustainable way rather than like a quick fad diet? Like what's a sustainable behavioral change way that someone could do it?
Yeah, and also like different ways, because I know like some people can track certain ways, but if you didn't want to track, like what are the options around it?
So I guess the first question before you even start losing weight is like, why? And I always ask this question because if you don't have a really valid why, then my question would be then, is it actually you who wants to lose weight, or the pressures from society that makes you feel like you are inferior because of the body you're in? If the reason why you want to lose weight is to optimize your health, and it's clear that losing weight may in fact optimize your health, which may be the case. Sometimes it does because you're able to move better. Maybe you've got a reduced body fat percentage, and so therefore, you're more fertile. There's so many reasons. But if you wanted to do that, then I would say, okay, so we're aiming from a health behavioral point of view that you want to lose weight because you want to optimize your health. Let's do things that are actually going to optimize your health rather than restrict. Let's optimize your diet. Let's start increasing the vegetables. Let's start increasing the fiber through fruit and the antioxidants through fruit and vegetables. Let's start reducing lots of saturated fats. Let's start increasing lots of good healthy fats. Let's look at checking in with our hunger and fullness hormones. Are we eating to excess all the time? How can we swap out some of the, ice cream that you have every single night to maybe a more nourishing snack that's actually going to fulfill the nutrient requirements we have each and every day? So that's what I would say. If you want to lose weight, ask yourself why, and also look at it from, I want to optimize my health, so how can I get there through my diet? The other thing, of course, it's not just about diet. Okay. Yes, diet's huge, but it's also about how you move your body, and also about the stresses you have in your life. I see this time and time again. People come to me like, Alice, I've tried to lose weight. I'm eating like one crumb and I'm still not losing weight. And I'm like, bruh, you're literally sleeping for 3 hours a night and you're stressed out of your brain. Like, let's work on that. Like, no. And I'm like, well, you're not going to lose weight because your body is highly stressed. The cortisol is like through the roof. Your body is holding onto fat because it's scared AF. You are not going to lose weight. So I think we've got to remember that it's not just food, it's also lifestyle, and it's also movement and exercise, and intuitive movement and exercise. You don't have to be running a marathon every day, but can we move our body in a way that feels good, that's not putting an extra stress on our body either, because that could also impact how we lose weight, in particular how we lose fat.
That's interesting. I've never thought about that before.
I felt attacked just then when Alice was like, when it's your body, I was like, why do I feel like she was talking about me just then?
I felt like that was also very relatable.
Yeah, Alice like can relate.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, it's too much stress.
Taking a step back again. So if let's say I'm someone who's healthy and right now I go, I want to lose weight, Alice, but I don't really know how to. And you've been like, yeah, Kelly, like let's explore that. How can I do this? Like, what are some steps, rather than like, I don't want to track my calories because that to me might be triggering or whatever it may be.
So if you don't want to track calories, which tracking calories is great for some people, but most people it's not the healthiest option for losing weight. If you want to go, okay, I want to start losing weight from a health behavioral point of view and actually optimize my health behaviors, I would say the first things first is to look at your diet overall and try finding what we call like the low hanging fruit. So let's give an example. If you go out for dinner once a week and you have Thai for dinner and it's your favorite thing in the entire world, keep that in, okay? Yes, okay, you could lose weight by reducing it, but keep that in. Let's look at the low-hanging fruit. Let's look at the breakfast you're having every single day, not the Thai you're just having on a Friday night, right? Now let's look at your breakfast. How can we keep the volume of it, okay, or optimize, increase the volume of it, but reduce the energy density of it? And what I mean by that is volume-rich foods are low in energy often and high in volume. So they keep you full, keep you functioning, give you fiber, but they don't give you a whole heap of energy. Now, I'm not saying that you can only have lettuce, but if, for example, you're having, a smoothie with heaps of oats and heaps of peanut butter and heaps of protein powder, that's quite an energy dense meal, as opposed to something like a smoothie with some spinach, some banana, maybe half the peanut butter and half the protein powder. So you're still getting the same volume, but half the energy. So focusing on volume-rich foods can be really useful for people, and it doesn't feel as much restrictive because essentially you're having very similar amounts and you're still ticking that satisfaction box that I enjoy this meal. What you don't want to do is you don't want to start taking out the things that you love and you enjoy and that gives you intense satisfaction. So the Thai on Fridays, which at the end of the day, that's kind of high hanging fruit. That's the stuff that you took it out, it wouldn't really make a difference. That's a lot of effort. Whereas the breakfast you have every day, you make it anyway. Let's optimize that by increasing the volume and reducing the energy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
Just quickly, a little tangent. What do you say, Alice, to people who are coming out being like, oh, oats are so bad for you, like don't be having oats?
I mean, I saw on TikTok or Instagram or some shit like that someone said that oats are toxic or something, and I was like, okay, I'm not saying right?
I heard this until right now.
I know. I actually had a heart attack. I was like, what next? Broccoli? And then to be honest, yeah, probably, because anything, if you eat a lot of it, or if you look at it, an element of that food will be somewhat inhibiting of certain nutrients or have something in it that in high amounts may cause adverse side effects in the human body. Anything. Broccoli, spinach, celery, anything. Okay? The thing is, what happens when it comes to these things is that people take tiny bits of information and they extrapolate it out to like fact. Another prime example here is when there was a lot of research done on Coke Zero recently.
Yeah.
It was like halfway through this year. Aspartame causes cancer. Now, I looked into this because I was like, bullshit. Like, no. Long story short, what happened was there was an experiment done, very few experiments done, like 3, and it was done on mice. And what they saw was they gave mice the aspartame in Coca-Cola, and what happened is the mice died or got cancer and died. So yes, okay, in that case, like aspartame causes cancer. 1, that's mice, not human beings. And 2, they gave them so much aspartame that you would be having to have 9 liters of Coke Zero every day to potentially develop cancer. If you're having 9 liters of Coke Zero every day, I'd be more fucking worried about tooth decay, bro, than right? Like that's more likely to cause detriment. So it's these things where it's like, it's fear mongering and it's not fair, and people see it and they go, yep, fact, I'm not ever having Coke Zero again. And it's just not, it's not it. It's not it.
Sorry, that was like a little tangent. I was just curious to hear Alice's thoughts on.
The answer to that is bullshit. No.
Back to, I guess, what we touched on earlier. So Alice, you see people with hormonal conditions. Can you please kind of explain a little bit about how different conditions such as PCOS, endometriosis can hinder, and how people with those sort of conditions can navigate nutrition a bit better?
So hormone, a lot of people ask me like, what do you do for hormone imbalances? And hormone imbalances is a very broad term. And the reason why I'm saying this is that hormones extremely diverse. So your hormone could be the insulin released from your pancreas. It also could be, the luteinizing hormone released from your ovaries. So there's so many different hormones that are hindered and impaired or optimized through food. And hormone imbalances could mean anything. It could mean literally anything. So when it comes to these sorts of things, I just want to say that if you feel like you have a hormone imbalance, if you want to improve it, like, what you have to figure out what the fuck a hormone imbalance is for you. Like, it could be diabetes, it could be endo, it could be PCOS, it could be just a super stress and your cortisol's out of the roof, right? So that's what I'm going to say there first. When it comes to endo and PCOS and menstrual conditions, and to an extent a hormone imbalance from a female point of view, more so from a menstrual hormone point of view, or a fertility hormone, or whatever you want to call it, there are so many things you can do from a diet point of view, but there is no food that will cure endo or PCOS or anything like that. It's just it's not going to happen. So, for example, when it comes to endo is a condition, an inflammatory condition, which affects usually the uterus within females and surrounding organs, where endometrial type lining basically lines things outside of the uterus. So the fallopian tubes, the ovaries, the bowels sometimes, and it can cause intense amount of pain every single month, and even throughout the month as well, not just when you're menstruating. So technically, if you think about it, it's an inflammatory condition with no real cause and no real cure. But if it's inflammatory, we know that food can inflame, and it can also reduce inflammation. So from that point, yes, food is extremely healing for things like endometriosis. From a PCOS point of view, basically what it is, it's a syndrome where it's a collection of symptoms that people experience due to hormonal abnormalities regarding androgens or testosterone within the female body. Now, from a dietary point of view, inflammation is important, yes, but the other thing that's important when it comes to PCOS is also carbohydrate intake, in particular, highly refined carbohydrates, which can technically impact your insulin, which also is hugely related to PCOS. So I guess to summarize that, a lower carbohydrate, not no carbohydrate, but a lower carbohydrate, more whole grain carbohydrate diet, higher in protein, can be really helpful for people who have PCOS. Not that it's going to cure it, but it's going to help regulate your insulin, which is going to have beneficial outcomes from a whole PCOS point of view. There's so much stuff out there you see on the internet where it's cut this, cut that, da da da. It's fucking bullshit, because at the end of the day, yes, these are conditions, and yes, food can help it, but there's no real thing, unless you have an allergy or like celiac disease where you have to eliminate gluten, where elimination of a product is going to really cure you or really, get 100% benefit from it. The more so thing is a holistic approach, and Kelly would understand where I say this, it's far more holistic than just eliminating things and adding things in. Like, it's got to be a whole body approach rather than just diet alone, and especially rather than just elimination alone.
Just talk about something a little bit different, but we have a lot of listeners who are working like really, really long hours, and we've done that as well, of people who are working shift work. Like, what is some advice that you give to those people who are kind of like, it's so hard to have a good diet when you're so overwhelmed at work, and you're just like, oh, I'll just go get takeaway, or it's just so easy to get a microwave meal from Coles or Woolworths. What would you say to those people about how to like maintain a healthy diet, even though they might not have the time to kind of cook really great, nutritious meals?
Yeah, it's so hard, isn't it? Because I mean, at the end of the day, you got to meet, like, as a dietitian, I always remind myself, I've got to meet my client where they are. Like, yes, in an optimal world, like, you want to be cooking fresh every day and having an abundance of fruit and vegetables and colors, but we don't live in ideal worlds. And especially for people who work in shift work or long hours, like, that's not an ideal world when it comes to health and well-being, to be honest. And I'm sure you guys can resonate. Like, you're not going to feel fantastic, right? So what I would say is that try and be simple. Try not to put too much expectation on yourself, and avoid as much decision as possible. So, for example, every breakfast that you have, why don't you just have it the same? Okay. Why don't you do overnight oats, which you know are nutritious, you enjoy and are filling? Cool. Tick. Okay. What about lunches? So if you feel like you can't prep lunch, you never have a time / a motivation, why don't you go get the ready-made meals? But every ready-made meal you have, looking at it and going, is this a nutritious option? Does it have vegetables in it? Does it have protein in it? Does it have fats? Does it have carbohydrates that are, well lasting, or whole grain carbohydrates? If you're not sure, can you grab tuna, rice, and spinach from Coles down the road? So it's okay if you don't have time. It's okay to have fast options, but there are fast options that can also be nutritious as well. The other thing as well is that meal prep can be really useful. So if you have opportunities to meal prep, especially if you're home later, having a dinner ready, available for when you can come home and just pop it in the microwave is so handy. Knowing every time you go home, you're exhausted and you have no creative, element in your brain to even think about what you're having for dinner. A nice starting point here is work on one meal at a time. So if you're like, okay, I just want to optimize my diet, start with breakfast. All the other meals can figure themselves out later. Start with breakfast or whatever the easiest meal is and go from there. Know what works for you, stick to that. It's okay if you have the same breakfast for a week, for 2 weeks, whatever. At least you're having something. You're getting into the habit of making something, and then you can refine the habit later on by changing up your breakfast or having your nutritious lunches or having your nutritious dinners. One thing I'll add to that is that people who are really stressed and tired and overwhelmed are often more likely to turn to sugar because they're tired, stressed, and overwhelmed. There's multiple reasons, and I won't go into that. But if you know that you turn to sugar in these times, have alternate options for when you know that you turn to sugar out of emotions or out of tiredness. And what I mean by that, it's fine to have sugar. Okay. If you follow me on Instagram, I love my desserts, right? But sometimes sugar's not the answer. Sometimes you need that muesli bar full of beautiful fibers to actually give you the energy and not the crash. Sometimes you need to take a walk outside and get some vitamin D than to down a whole packet of tiny teddies. So have options there, because if there's no options there, you've got one option, and the one option's tiny teddies, then you're going to go for that regardless.
Yeah, 100%. That was definitely very relatable.
Yeah, I do that all the time. I'm like, if I'd have an emotional day at work, I'd literally go home and buy cake on the way home, and I would eat like half a cake just to kind of make myself feel better. So I agree. If I had something else, like, I definitely would have tried to choose that option. And I would find if I just go for a walk, I would feel 110 times better.
Yeah.
But I'd often just choose the easy option.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, food is nostalgic. It's comforting. It releases dopamine, serotonin. It feels good. It's available to us. Like, you're not human, like, for doing that. Like, you were human for doing that. But sometimes there are better options. And, I guess when it comes to emotion eating, it's such a profound area that I work in, because so many people are highly stressed and highly emotional, and they often turn to food because it's been conditioned in us since a young child that, hey, you've been good, have a lollipop, right? So nowadays we turn to these foods because it's conditioned, but it's also extremely innate because it helps us feel good because of the hormones released in our brain. But knowing that it's not always the best option in these situations, it's not going to soothe our emotions as much as we want them to, and walking outside may be better.
Alice, one last big nutrition question for you. Something that's kind of really interesting to me, and I think I may have spoken to him about him before, but have you heard of a guy named Tim Spector?
How do I know that name?
Wow, this comes into the next question. The importance of gut health. So Tim Spector is a very, very big person or spokesperson for gut health. He runs this own company called Zoe. And it's actually been quite controversial in the fitness world because he's very outspoken about gut health and how he has this, I won't go into it, but he basically thinks it's not, I'm not even going to go into it. He has his own views on weight loss. But anyway, Alice, what I wanted to ask you is, can you kind of give a bit of insight into the importance of gut health and how your gut health can be linked to everything in your body?
Gut health is so complex. I would say that, so as a definition, I would say that a healthy gut is two things: minimal symptoms and also a healthy gut microbiome. Now, from what we know right now, a healthy gut microbiome basically means a diverse one. So an abundance of different bacteria, yeast, fungi, all those beautiful things that we need are basically a forest full of beautiful things within our guts. And also there's a microbiome basically everywhere within our body. But if we're talking about the gut, this is what it is specifically. The evidence is so new that we don't really know a heap about it. And it's really, really complex about how it actually impacts other elements of your well-being. But we do know one thing is that our gut microbiome has a huge impact on both our physical and our mental health. Okay. And in particular, there was a study done, I don't even know when, maybe 5-10 years ago, where there were two study groups, people who had basically like depression that couldn't be helped, quote unquote. And then they had another group of people who had depression that couldn't be, I don't know what that word is, like resistant to therapies. And what happens is two groups, one were given antidepressants and another were given basically like put on a plant-based diet. And what they noticed after several months was that the people who were on a plant-based diet had the same positive outcomes as the people on antidepressants. And that's just diet. Like that's nothing else. That's no lifestyle connection, anything like that. So that itself just shows the impact of our diet on our gut, on our mental health, but more so how the microbiome impacts our mental health. So basically when it comes to gut health, like it is so complex, but I think that there's a lot of people out there who you previously named perhaps that clinicalize it to an extent where it becomes extremely stressful. And I think we've got to remember our privilege here in knowing even that gut health exists, knowing that we have access to fruit and vegetables, knowing we have access to fresh water. So yes, like it's so interesting. And yes, like we want to have a good gut health. And of course, but like we've got to remember that like these things that these professionals put forward are extremely privileged and 1%ers that for the general population are, one, accessible, and two, really needed for still a healthy gut. Yeah. I think the biggest thing when it comes to gut health is actually people's stress and their lifestyle over their food. Yes, food's important. No one denying that. Like 100%, your food fertilizes the garden, right? But if you're stressed out of your brain and you're not sleeping, like that has a profound impact on your gut health as well. So yeah, gut health's important. Yeah, gut health impacts your physical and mental health. Yeah, we don't really know how much by. Yeah, there's people out there saying it's the most important thing in the entire universe, but we've got to remember our privilege here. We've got to remember that if we've just got, you know, like a nice healthy diet and a really nice lifestyle and, you know, we've got connection community, like that's enough to support your gut health. Like let's just stay away from all the little ins and outs of it all.
Amen.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good advice. So moving on from all the nutrition, we'd love to hear a little bit about like your life in the van and your travel and what like your experience has kind of taught you so far.
So I feel like there's so much to say here. I'm like, which bit do I say?
Start from the beginning. Tell us like what made you pack up? What was the inspiration?
So, well, what was the year? 2022, beginning of 2022, I went through like a really shit breakup and it taught me a lot. And in particular, it taught me what I need to prioritize and what actually I value. Also in the beginning of 2022, I had this like breakdown, burnout phase where I was just like, what am I doing? Like I'm exhausted all the time. I'm stressed all the time. I don't have time for anything. Yes, I'm running my business, but it doesn't need to be like this. And I guess like when that breakup happened and I moved back to Sydney, I was down in Wollongong at the time. When I moved back to Sydney, I just had this like revelation. I was like, I literally work fully online. Like, why am I living at home? Like, why am I paying rent, stupid rent in Sydney when I could be going traveling and working at the same time? It took me about 6 months to really like, I was kind of like tossing on the idea. And to be honest, like when I was at uni, I'd been thinking about doing it for ages, but just the time never came about and I kind of forgot about it. Basically at the end of this year, I decided one day, I was like, screw this, I'm done. I need to move. I need to do something because I just don't want to continue with this rat race that I have created for myself essentially. So I bought a van and got somebody to fit it out, a mate to fit it out with me. Literally 3 weeks later, sold everything that I owned except for what's in this van and just headed up north. And that was basically the start of it. And it's really interesting. I always said to myself, like, this trip is going to change my life. And 100% have no doubt it has. Like, it's transformed my life in so many ways that I don't even have the time to explain. But I think for the most part, it's transformed my mental health and my priorities and what I value. But it's also transformed my business in that I now know what I want to put energy into and what I don't. And I also have had opportunities being on the road where I would never have had if I was just living at home. I also met my now partner on the road, and he's a videographer, and he's actually jumping in the van with me in a month today, actually, and traveling with me around. So we're starting a YouTube channel, and he's like super awesome and passionate about videography, and he's in Dubai at the moment doing a massive shoot for a big company. So he's extremely talented. So I feel very blessed to have him in my life and to be joining me on the road. But I'm still working. Yes, I do some traveling and things, but I still own a business. I've still got to be working. I've still got to be on. Like, it's not like, I think a lot of people think I'm just on a holiday, and they're like, oh, when are you coming home? And I'm like, this is my home.
Yeah.
Like, oh, and they call me in the middle of Tuesday like morning, and I'm like, I'm working. They're like, what? I just like make recipes and just like fuck around, and I'm like, okay.
Oh, that was awesome. That's like good inspo. I feel like that's such a vibe. Have a breakup, fucking get out there, go on.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's better time. It's the breakup, isn't it? It's and I think like I'm super into like my like manifestation, woo shit like that. And I think when you like experience stuff like that, like a life-changing event, let's call it, because it technically was to what he said. I had my future with this person, and all of a sudden just like went away. Believing that you can achieve something, or believing you can do something, believing that that is the first step, and knowing and believing in yourself, I believe, is like half the battle. And the doing is it happens when you believe in yourself. But for me, I was like, when I went on this trip, I was like, I know this is going to change my life, and I'm going to make it change my life. And so I went into it like that. And so I was always open to opportunities in my business or my personal life that help that happen, like help create this new life for me. And I believe that if I wasn't in that way of thinking, and I was like, fuck this, I've broken up with the love of my life, and now I'm just like in a van, like I just don't think I would have approached that as well. And it's not to say I'm perfect. Like, I've been there, done that with the victim mentality, but nowadays I just approach things as like, this is an opportunity rather than a hindrance, or rather than it's, the universe is supporting me, whatever,
Yes,
blah, blah.
It is.
I love that. Ella's like laughing because that's very much like, I have the exact same, like that resonates with me a lot. And like even Ella and I, like we've both gone through a few things recently, and that's absolutely the right perspective I think is to have.
Yeah, that felt really helpful for me just then. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna take that on board and just I'm gonna run with that.
I have this, it's actually right here. This is like my manifestation book, and I wrote it like the first day I left, and like it's crazy. I've never really believed in manifestation until I came on this like trip, really. And like some of the things I write in here, and I've read back on it, and I'm like, that's true now. Like, how did that happen? And it's the power of visualization and energy frequencies, and whatever.
Amen.
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
Yes, girl.
Journal and just watch me.
Yeah, honestly, thrive. So good.
I love it.
All right, Alice. So you are actually our very first guest to have on this podcast, and we are starting a tradition. And so you're going to be the first to kick it off. This podcast is called Just Can't Hack It. Have you ever felt like you just can't hack it, or have had some sort of imposter syndrome? And how have you managed this? And do you have any advice you would give to listeners who may be feeling that way?
I feel like so this is going to be a very long answer. I feel like I do struggle with imposter syndrome, and not that I'm like, I'm not good enough for this, but when things happen, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, who's me? Like, why would they choose me, or why would they do that? Like, I'm nobody, like that's the thought patterns that come through my head every single day. And I think that when I was going through that burnout period in 2022, I felt like if you want, like, I couldn't hack it. I was like, I'm not meant for business. Like, I can't do it. Like, I don't have the capacity. I'm not a hustler. Like, I'm not a go to bed at 1 a.m., wake up at 3 a.m. and keep on the computer and like do networking and shit. Like, that's not me. But I then realized I can create a business that works for me. But at the time I was like, nah, I can't do this. I've got to start again. Like, I don't want to be feeling this way. So yeah, I think I have experienced that. I think my biggest advice that I wish I told myself is that even though you can't do that, doesn't mean you can't do whatever the other thing is. So for example, if you believe like in that situation, I can't run business, it's like, no, you can't run that business. You can't do that because that doesn't align with who you are and what you value. But you can do this. You can live in a van. You can run your own business, and you can be creative. So just because you can't do one thing, or you feel like you can't hack one thing, doesn't mean you can't thrive in another thing. And you've got to really check for yourself and what aligns with you and what your values are. I think that's imperative for everyone to do a value check or whatever every single year, because your values change. But I think that when you're not aligning your values with your work and things like that, that's when burnout happens. That's when resentment happens. That's where you just hate everything and you feel like you can't hack it, because like you're not supposed to hack that. You're supposed to hack something else.
I love that. That speaks to us. Yeah, no. And I think that's a really interesting take as well, because I think for a while, even in my experience, even though I was being told constantly from very vocal people that I just couldn't hack it, I was trying to prove them wrong. But I think it's okay to like look at it from the perspective of like, even if you're not hacking it, like you said, that means it might not be right for you. That doesn't mean there's not something else out there that is right for you.
Exactly. Doesn't mean you should just like believe that you can't hack everything.
Yeah.
Like there's always something that you can do.
Yeah.
So where can people find you? You've spoken about your Instagram and your TikTok. Like what's your
and your Amazon book?
Yes, your book. I really want to read it now.
So I mean, so TikTok and Instagram are usually my places. So Alice Bleathman _dietitian is Instagram, and then Alice and Ziggy is TikTok. I'm starting a YouTube with my partner in like a few weeks, so that will be Alice and TJ. I need to like consolidate my name because it's a bit chaotic at the moment. I'm still figuring it out with my mentor, but and then my book is just called Whole, and you just pop it in Google Whole Alice Bleathman, it'll come up. It's about like healing from heartbreak and healing in general, and then like becoming whole and knowing your worth and all that shit. So you can buy that.
Yes, amazing. We love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's been an absolute pleasure. You have such a great perspective on life.
I feel like I've learned a lot, so I know that like anyone listening will really appreciate what you've had to say today as well.
Oh, thank you.